What if the most dangerous person in your life isn't your enemy? What if it's someone who smiles at you every single day? Most people spend their entire lives worrying about the wrong threat. They guard themselves against strangers, against rivals, against people who openly criticize them. But they leave the door wide open to a far more insidious kind of danger. The person sitting right beside them at the dinner table, the friend who says, "Congratulations," but feels something twist inside them when you succeed. The coworker who cheers you on in public, but subtly undermines you in private. Friedrich Nietzsche called this one of the most corrosive forces in human nature. He had a word for it: resentment. It is not simple hatred. It is something far more complex and far more hidden. It is the slow poison of a person who cannot rise, so they quietly work to ensure that neither do you. The disturbing truth is this: most people who secretly want you to fail will never tell you. They are too afraid of their own feelings. They have buried their envy so deep beneath smiles and kind words that even they don't fully understand what they feel. But their behavior tells the truth. Their mouth never will. Carl Jung warned us that what people refuse to acknowledge in themselves does not disappear. It goes underground. And underground, it shapes everything they do. In this video, we will uncover the 7 signs that someone smiles at you but secretly wants you to fail. Signs drawn from Nietzsche's philosophy, Jungian psychology, and the darkest, most honest truths about human nature. By the end of this, you will never look at certain behaviors the same way again. Pay close attention to how someone reacts when things go wrong for you. Most people assume that a friend's sympathy is genuine, and sometimes it is. But Nietzsche observed something unsettling about people trapped in resentment. They come alive in your suffering in a way they never do in your success. Notice the difference in their energy. When you share bad news, a job loss, a failed relationship, a setback in your business, certain people light up. Not obviously, not cruelly. It's subtle. Their voice becomes warmer. They lean in closer. They offer comfort with just a little too much enthusiasm. They ask detailed follow-up questions. They remember every painful detail and bring it up again weeks later, not out of concern, but because they are feeding something inside themselves. Now tell that same person you got a promotion, or that you finished something you're proud of. Watch what happens. The energy changes, the warmth cools, the questions dry up. The conversation shifts quickly to something else, often something about them. This is not a coincidence. This is what psychologists call Schadenfreude, pleasure derived from another's misfortune. But unlike the obvious version you might see on the internet, the kind Nietzsche wrote about is buried beneath layers of social performance. The person themselves may not even consciously recognize what they feel. Jung called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to look at. When someone cannot celebrate your success, it is because your success illuminates something they have refused to face about their own life. Your win becomes their loss. Your progress becomes evidence of their stagnation. The real-life pattern looks like this. You go through a difficult breakup, and a certain friend is suddenly texting you every day, deeply invested in your pain. The moment you recover and start thriving again, they become harder to reach. Your suffering was the glue in the relationship. Your strength makes them pull away. Remember this: the people who love you will be energized by your victories, just as much as they comfort you in your defeats. When someone consistently shows more warmth in your dark moments than in your bright ones, that asymmetry is telling you something important. There is an art form that certain people have mastered without ever realizing it. It is the compliment that leaves you feeling vaguely worse about yourself. You did so well. I'm honestly shocked. You look great. You've lost weight, right? You really needed that. That's impressive for someone who didn't go to the best school. I could never be as bold as you. I care too much about what people think. These are not accidents. They are weapons disguised as flowers. Nietzsche understood that people who cannot bear another's superiority will find ways to cut them back down to size, while maintaining the social fiction of kindness. It is the coward's way of asserting dominance. They praise you just enough to appear supportive, and then insert a needle so small you barely feel it go in. But the wound is there. The psychological mechanism is this: when someone's ego is threatened by your progress, they must find a way to re-establish their sense of superiority. Open attack is socially dangerous. Open praise feels impossible. So they find the narrow middle ground, the undermining compliment. Notice how these compliments almost always contain an implicit contrast. They are saying, "You did well," and "I am surprised you did well," in the same breath. They are acknowledging your result, while subtly questioning whether you deserve it. They are building you up just enough to knock you down. In the workplace, this looks like a colleague who praises your presentation in the meeting, then says to someone else afterward, "It was good, but honestly, the idea was half-baked. They just sold it well." In friendships, it looks like someone who says, "You're so confident. I wish I didn't overthink things like a perfectionist," subtly placing their neurosis above your confidence, as though your calm is naivety and their anxiety is depth. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that what others say about us is not within our control, only our response is. But awareness is the first step to a wise response. You must learn to hear not just the words, but the music underneath them. When a compliment leaves you feeling subtly smaller, trust that feeling. It is information. "Are you sure that's a good idea? I'm just worried about you. That seems really risky. I don't want you to get hurt. I'm your friend, and I need to be honest. I don't think you're ready." Fake concern is one of the most effective tools in the arsenal of someone who secretly wants you to stay exactly where you are. Nietzsche wrote that the herd mentality, the pull toward conformity and mediocrity, is not enforced by cruelty alone. It is enforced by the language of love. Those who have settled for less in their own lives often become unconscious enforcers of limits. They do not want you to rise above the level they have accepted as their ceiling. So they frame their fear of your growth as concern for your well-being. The key is in the pattern. Everyone gives cautious advice occasionally. But watch for the person who consistently applies this treatment only to your upward moves. They will never warn you about stagnation. They will never express concern that you are playing too small. They only mobilize their anxiety when you begin to reach beyond the familiar. A man decides to start a business. His close friend, who has worked the same job for a decade and feels secretly unfulfilled, suddenly becomes a risk analyst. He brings up statistics about failure rates, warns about the economy, shares stories of people who tried and lost everything. The concern sounds genuine, but if you pay attention, this same friend never had anything to say about the man's former stagnation. He never said, "Are you sure you want to stay at that job that's been draining you for years?" His concern has a very specific direction. It only activates when you threaten to move beyond where he stands. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." The people who truly believe in you will help you build those weapons. The people who secretly fear your success will confiscate them under the pretense of keeping you safe. In Nietzsche's world, silence speaks. And there is a particular silence, a cold, contained, conspicuously neutral silence that tells you everything about where someone stands. You share exciting news. You landed the deal. You finished the project. You got into the program. And certain people respond with almost nothing. Not cruelty, not criticism, just a muted, deflecting response that communicates the minimum. "Oh, cool. Nice. Good for you." And then they change the subject. This is the silence of someone who cannot bring themselves to celebrate you, but also does not want to reveal their true feelings. So they retreat into emotional blankness. They give you just enough to not appear rude, but nothing that requires them to genuinely acknowledge your achievement. Compare this to how that same person reacts to other topics. Are they capable of enthusiasm? Can they speak for 20 minutes about a sports team, a TV show, a trip they are planning? Then their silence about your success is not a personality trait. It is a choice, even if it is an unconscious one. Jung's concept of the shadow is useful here again. When people suppress their envy, they often express it through absence rather than action. They cannot generate false excitement convincingly, so they generate nothing. The blankness is the tell. In a friendship, this looks like posting a major life milestone online and noticing that almost everyone responds, except that one person who is almost always online, who liked everything else you posted that week, but somehow missed this. In a family, this looks like achieving something significant and realizing your sibling congratulated you with less warmth than a casual acquaintance did. What you are witnessing is a person who is working very hard to feel nothing, because what they actually feel is too uncomfortable to face. This one is among the most damaging and the most calculated. Watch for the person who consistently finds the worst possible moment to introduce fear, confusion, or self-doubt into your mind. Right before your interview, the morning of your launch, an hour before the presentation you have spent weeks preparing for. "I heard that company is really unstable. Are you sure you want this job? I was reading about people who started similar businesses, and I thought of you. The statistics are brutal. You look tired. Are you feeling okay? You want to be at your best, right?" The timing is never an accident. These people know exactly when you are most vulnerable, when the stakes are highest and your nerves are most alive. And that is precisely the moment they choose to introduce their concern. This is one of the clearest signs because it requires knowledge of your schedule, your hopes, and your psychology. A person has to know you well enough to identify your important moments and then choose to say something destabilizing at exactly that moment. Unconscious or not, this is sabotage. Schopenhauer observed that the will to dominate is embedded deep in human nature, and for those who cannot win directly, sabotage becomes the only tool. If they cannot outperform you, they can disrupt you. If they cannot beat you at your best, they can ensure you never arrive at your best. The real-life pattern. A woman is about to give the biggest pitch of her career. That morning, her closest friend texts, "I'm sure you'll be fine. A lot of people freeze in front of investors, though. It's really common. Don't worry about it." Nobody asked about freezing. Nobody mentioned that. The friend introduced it. And now the woman walks into the room with a new fear she did not carry the night before. Protect your preparation. Protect the energy you carry into your most important moments. And notice, very carefully, who consistently chooses those moments to insert their doubts. Every relationship has a foundation. Sometimes that foundation is shared joy, shared ambition, shared values. But in some relationships, look carefully, the foundation is shared grievance. These people find their deepest connection with you not when you are building something, but when you are both tearing something down. Complaining about a job, about other people, about life's unfairness, about how the system is rigged. The moment you stop complaining and start moving, the connection weakens. Nietzsche was especially sharp on this. He wrote that resentment binds people together in mutual powerlessness. The unspoken contract is, we will feel better about where we are by convincing each other that where we are is everyone's destination. If you break that contract by actually leaving, by actually rising, You don't just succeed. You betray them. You have rejected the shared worldview that their comfort depended on. This is why people who secretly want you to fail often feel most threatened, not by your success itself, but by what your success implies. If you made it out, maybe they could have too. And that thought is unbearable. Watch the shift in a friendship when you stop commiserating and start progressing. The friend who used to call you every week for long venting sessions suddenly has less to say. The conversations feel strained. You can feel them pulling back because you were their mirror for a worldview, that the world is unfair, that effort doesn't pay, that people like them don't win. And you just shattered it. In a work environment, this is the group of colleagues who bond over how bad the company is, how underappreciated they all are, how management is incompetent. The moment one of them gets promoted, the group turns on them. Not because the promoted person did anything wrong, but because they disturbed the equilibrium of shared powerlessness. The final sign is perhaps the most sophisticated and the most difficult to detect. These are people who position themselves as your advisor, your mentor, your trusted voice. And some of what they tell you is genuinely useful, which is why it works. They have established credibility. You have learned to trust their counsel, and they use that trust to steer you almost imperceptibly in directions that serve their own interests or comfort rather than your growth. The colleague who advises you not to negotiate your salary because they never did, and if you succeed, they will feel the weight of their own submission. The friend who talks you out of moving to a new city, not because the opportunity is bad, but because your absence would leave them alone with their own inertia. The family member who warns you away from a certain relationship, not because the partner is wrong for you, but because your happiness makes their own loneliness more visible. This is not always conscious. This is the insidious part. Many of these people genuinely believe they are helping you. They have rationalized their interference so thoroughly that they can deliver their sabotage with a clear conscience and tears in their eyes. Nietzsche warned about this type of person most severely. He called them the life deniers, those who, unable to affirm their own existence, quietly work to contract yours. Their advice will always trend in one direction, towards safety, towards smallness, toward the familiar, toward staying within reach of where they are. The test is this: does following their advice consistently make your life larger or smaller? Does it lead you toward growth or away from it? Whose comfort does their counsel actually protect? Good advice from someone who truly wants your success will sometimes be uncomfortable. It will challenge you. It will ask more of you. It will point you toward a version of yourself they can see, even when you cannot. But advice from someone who secretly wants you to stay where you are will always be comfortable. Comfortable for them. Why do people behave this way? Why does a person smile at you while secretly hoping you do not make it? The answer lives in the space between what humans want and what they fear they deserve. We live in a world built on comparison. From childhood, we are measured against one another. Grades, appearances, achievements, milestones. And when the comparison does not favor us, most people do not simply accept it and redirect their energy. Instead, something more defensive happens. The ego, threatened by evidence of its own limitations, begins to protect itself by subtly devaluing the competition. This is what Nietzsche called the slave morality. When a person cannot achieve what they desire, they do not honestly confront their own choices. Instead, they reframe the desire itself as something suspicious. Success becomes arrogance, ambition becomes selfishness, confidence becomes vanity. By labeling your qualities as vices, they relieve themselves of the discomfort of having failed to cultivate those qualities in themselves. Carl Jung said that we do not see the world as it is. We see it as we are. The person who feels that success is unattainable will see your success as luck. The person who has abandoned their dreams will experience your courage as recklessness. The person who has never pursued what they truly wanted will find 100 reasons why what you are pursuing is not worth wanting. Underneath all of this is fear. Not of you specifically, but of the mirror you hold up. You are proof that another path was possible. You are the uncomfortable evidence that the story they have told themselves about why they stayed, why they stopped, why they settled, may not be the only true story. That is an almost unbearable confrontation. And most people, rather than face it, will quietly work to prevent that confrontation from ever happening. Now that you can see these patterns, the question is, what do you do? First, stay calm. The worst response to discovering that someone secretly wants you to fail is to become consumed by anger or paranoia. Nietzsche himself warned against the trap of building your identity around those who oppose you. Your focus belongs on your path, not on their motivations. Second, stop auditing your wins for their approval. One of the most damaging habits is needing certain people to celebrate you before you can celebrate yourself. When you stop waiting for their reaction, you remove their power. Their silence cannot hurt what you have already decided is worth celebrating. Third, be selective about who you share your plans with. Not every person in your life needs to know what you are building before it is built. Protect your early momentum. The period before a dream takes shape is the most fragile and the most vulnerable to the undermining comment, the planted doubt, the well-timed warning. Share with those who have already demonstrated that they can carry your hope without crushing it. Fourth, set boundaries without explanation. You do not owe anyone an argument about your choices. The person who consistently discourages you does not need a debate. They need a boundary. You can love someone and still decide that their input about your ambitions is not something you seek out. Silence is not cruelty. It is wisdom. Fifth, pour your energy into the work. The most powerful response to someone who wants you to fail is not confrontation. It is continuation. Every day you keep moving is a day their doubt loses more ground. Let your results speak in a language no undermining comment can translate. We live in a time that has made this ancient dynamic exponentially more acute. Social media has turned human status into a public performance. Every achievement is measured in real time against thousands of others. Every success is broadcast. Every failure is visible. And this level of constant comparison has activated the most defensive and most envious aspects of human psychology on a scale that no previous generation ever experienced. The attention economy rewards performance over authenticity. People have learned to perform support even when they feel none. They have learned to post the congratulatory comment they do not feel, to present the public face of celebration while quietly hoping the person stumbles. The gap between the performed self and the true self has never been wider. Emotional intelligence, the ability to read beneath the surface of human behavior, has become not a luxury, but a survival skill. In a world of curated personas and performative relationships, the person who can identify what is real versus what is performed has a profound advantage. Not because they will live in suspicion of everyone, but because they will be able to invest their trust, their energy, and their vulnerability in the right people. The people who will protect your peace in this era are those who can tell the truth about what they feel, who will sit with you honestly in both your failures and your victories, and whose support does not need an audience to be real. They exist. They are rarer than they should be, but they exist. And knowing the difference between them and the others is not pessimism. It is clarity. You now carry something that most people spend their entire lives without. You can see the smile and read what lies behind it. You can hear the compliment and recognize the needle beneath the flower. You can watch someone light up at your suffering and understand exactly what that light is made of. This does not mean the world is a hostile place. It means you are finally seeing it clearly, and there is enormous power in that clarity. Nietzsche wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." The people who secretly want you to fail are not your enemies in the tragic sense. They are people who are suffering from the gap between where they are and where they wished they had gone. And they have turned that suffering outward. You do not need to hate them. You do not need to expose them or defeat them. You simply need to stop handing them the keys to your forward movement. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." The people in your life who cannot bear your success have not yet done that work for themselves. That is their burden, not yours. Your responsibility is to do that work, to accept your own worth, your own capacity, your own right to build something real. And Marcus Aurelius, who led an empire and still had to navigate the envy and sabotage of those closest to him, offered the most grounded wisdom of all. Do what nature requires. Set out at once if possible. Don't look around to see if people will know about it. Don't expect Plato's ideal state. Be satisfied with even the smallest step forward. The people who want you to fail are counting on your doubt. The people who want you to fail are counting on your need for their approval. The people who want you to fail are counting on you being distracted by them. Disappoint them. Keep your eyes forward. Protect your energy like the rare resource it is. Choose your circle with the precision of someone who knows that proximity is destiny. And remember, the most radical act you can perform in a world full of people who have made peace with smallness is to refuse to do the same. You were not built to seek permission to become what you already have the capacity to be. And no smile, however warm, however consistent, however convincing, can change that.